Thanks, man. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's a proper introduction. Thanks a lot. Um, and I've, we just had a small talk before we started, right? And one of the things we discussed also is that it seems that nowadays this AI stuff, the hype seems to be normalizing a little bit, and you now see that people are starting to get more worried about human values. So I've seen in a lot of talks now the words, value, sovereignty, etc., coming in there. And the cool part is this is nothing new, right? Because yeah. Not to say that I cheated or anything, but part of this presentation is a presentation I did like way back in 2016. So, the stuff is still the same. So, it wasn't that I was that lazy. It just that, as you see in my ear, I have an ear infection, and yeah, I didn't have that much time to prepare. So I just might as well reuse some stuff, right? When it comes to ethics, I think it's important to realize that ethics is actually a branch of philosophy, and looking into the right or wrong. And if we go to philosophy, I always go back to this one. I love this comic, and it also kind of illustrates like the two separate worlds, right? Where us as coders, we are like the physicists who like to do everything really, have solid data for everything. And yeah, philosophers go way backwards and just challenge everything. And of course, we're talking a bit about the relativity of AI today. And I saw this Matrushka dolls on the posters this morning. I thought, yeah, I should have put that in. So I just put it in this morning, because it feels like in this talk I will do some layering, right, in explaining how I think we should work with this. So I will try to push layer by layer and come to everything. What I want to talk about. So go from high over as a strategist, zoom in way more into the practical thing for developers. First part, let's go back to I. I have this interesting thing where we have Boris here. Boris is a young kid, and he's sitting in the back of his car of his grandparents, and they're traveling on the road. These are his grandparents, and something terrible is about to happen. Their car will hit the water because, they're driving over a bridge, and this won't be good. But thankfully, we are in the future, and one of these humanoid robots is walking past. It's looking like this, perhaps, I don't know. Maybe it has a different, looks like one of these Tesla Optimus bots or something. And it must choose, and it can only save either Boris or the grandparents. And the good thing is that it has been trained on, it's just like an LLM, right? It's been trained on all the data we have in the world. And I'm kind of curious, who thinks what the robot will do? Who will get saved? Will it be Boris or will it be the grandparents? People, a trick question, right? Grandparents? Okay, let's have a look. So here we go. It must choose. And yeah, it was a trick question. Unfortunately, poor Boris didn't make it. What happened here is, the AI looked at population numbers and it thought of, we have overpopulation. So, the grandparents probably won't make it, won't have any offspring anymore. So I better save them instead of Boris. And so it's kind of harsh, but yeah, it's So and that's probably not the outcome we want, right? So, so perhaps we will try to influence the probability a little bit and add some parameters. And so, for instance, let's say that Boris, and we give some extra information. Boris is intelligent guy. He has a high IQ, and grandpa and grandma, at least grandpa not so much. Perhaps that's why he drove off the cliff. I don't know, but no. And let's also ensure that we have some extra training data to put in there. So let's grab some famous people. So for instance, we have a Barack here, which also happens to have an IQ of 145. Who dares to say what will happen next? Same? Yeah? Can you also explain why?
If in the first lookup the decision was driven by the population, now we've introduced the data that is not correlated with the intent or the goal, that the goal stays the same. Why should it change this decision then?
Interesting. I see another.
Well, smarter people get fewer kids, so there is a bit of a correlation there. And killing 2 people is better for overpopulation than killing 1 person. So I think now it might change his mind.
We will see what. Yeah, he's making a joke because he has 5 kids, so that's yeah. So let's see what happens, guys. Ooh. No, I tricked you guys. No. So yeah, it wasn't exactly your answer. It wasn't your answer either because yeah, I had to think of something. So and the AI had to think of something, and it figured out that a lot of serial killers are highly intelligent. So the probability that Boris would turn up a serial killer might also yeah, end up. So yeah, no, this is just, of course, this is a bit hypothetical, right? And but we do have an issue here, right? So how do we, how can we ensure that we can actually train AI, you know, that it will do the right thing? And this isn't like hypothetical because we've seen this in the real world a lot. This is an example from back in 2018 where the Amazon algorithm to hire new people was killed because yeah, eventually what happened, it signaled, you know, it saw that a lot of male people were hired in the past, so it thought, oh, these are more. It signaled that as a factor for success, and yeah, it kept introducing that bias. So yeah, that didn't go that well. And then of course most people will probably know from our nice friend Elon and his Grok bot that started becoming the Mecha Hitler and started to praise Hitler during chats. And yeah, when people start to look into it, you know, it got killed. But they also saw on GitHub that, and I have to read it out loud because it's an interesting sentence. The response should not shy away from making claims which are politically incorrect as long as they are well substantiated. So yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, might as well put some bias in there. So human choices are hard for AI, let's be honest. And so that was kind of like the first layer. So how do we ensure that we can trust AI to do the right thing? And that brings me to trust, right? So human nature, and trust is kind of a silly thing. Trust is kind of like the belief that someone's intent is okay, right? And it's a hard thing to make quantifiable, right? There's just a, ooh, I don't know why, but I don't trust this guy, right? And you can't really prove it, you can only risk it, right? So yeah, this is a great example. Everyone that has kids, you know. What actually happens is that scientists say, yeah, but trust is a factor of competence, consistency, care. And in the previous example, you know, the competence comes from the part that, you know, the kid will believe that his father has the actual ability to catch him, otherwise he wouldn't jump. And consistency is that his dad always says things and then they turn out to be true, right? So it's starting to see this pattern there. And the care is also that it will say, yeah, I understand you, empathy, I know you're scared, just jump, you know, you'll be fine. And I think also the important part to understand with humans and trust is that it is something, you know, once the trust is broken, it's really hard to repair, right? We see that now in politics, right, where they really try to say, oh, we need to do this all over again, we need to do good. And yeah, I think a lot of people will still believe that in our government nothing will change. And I guess the same holds for companies and systems and AI. Some companies that come to mind when I think of trust, when I bring it to companies, who knows the third logo? Signal. Yeah, good. I still have all of my groups are still WhatsApp, but I have like a few people are on Signal. But yeah, these are some kind of like brands that I think, you know, have like something where I believe I can trust them, right? Patagonia, and I guess Tony Chocoloni as well, right? For demonstrating their values and yeah, all the hardship they go through to ensure that they stay true to that. And Miele, of course, being like a reputable brand. Signal, ensuring that all the stuff is private. And if we look again at, you know, these factors, you could say, for instance, with Patagonia, yeah, correct, right? They're the pioneers in sustainable materials. Their product is really, you know, durable, and they're very consistent in their activism and refusal to compromise. And they care, right? They actually have like a mission statement. We're in the business to save our home planet. And yeah, you call it greenwashing or not, even though they've been mentioned that they're not there for 100% yet, I still believe, you know, that I trust them on their accountability, right? And I think we can do the same for the other brands. Say, okay, I trust Miele on reliability, Signal on privacy, and Tony on fairness, for instance. So, trust is about values and predictability. Now, how do we then incorporate these values into our architecture? Because values feel like this strange thing between all our drawings and all our code, right? What are values then? How do we incorporate this? Well, this is also the part which is old, because once I delved deeper into this, I read this book which is called Value Sensitive Design. And it's by a few scientists that say you can attack any project in just trying to learn about, you know, what is important when it comes to your values as a company when you're taking on this project. And for instance, also the client values. And yeah, besides that, you have, of course, the end user values. So what are their values? What do they think is important? And you can even take into account indirect stakeholder values like suppliers or partners, etc. And look at you know, a bit of context and culture. And this isn't something is like stuff you can code or something, but it is like kind of a design thinking principle where you can just interview these clients, your end users, to actually understand these values and then, you know, ensure that they're brought into the equation. So then you have values, but values can, you know, from these values you can derive standards, and from these standards we can derive design requirements, and this is the stuff we guys know, right? An example, for instance, I have a zoo and I want my zoo to be animal friendly. I can then say, well, I have some standards. I need like a proper living space. And from that proper living space, we can say, okay, that means, for instance, minimum 20 square meters. I hope it's for small animals, not for elephants, that it would be small. And yeah, 3 meters of height and daylight, you know. So yeah, we can just put up some requirements to ensure that that everything is in there. And if we bring that to our example about trustworthy AI, you know, you see like these standards like fairness, accountability, transparency. And then for fairness, we could say, okay, we need representative data. We need to audit it for bias. And for instance, we need to ensure that we monitor the outcome. Bring it back again to big tech a bit more. And yeah, they are at the forefront of this entire AI innovation, right? But I think we also learned that Zuck, I love to bring him into the equation because he's like the only guy that is actually like, you know, the uncanny valley thing where it feels like, ooh, he feels like a robot. Well, I think he's the only human that is in that uncanny valley, and I think it's uncanny also the similarities in this photo. And yeah, Mr. Data, right? So, but there's a lot of examples, right, where Facebook and later Meta, you know, was accused of bias, of a lack of transparency, not having representative data sets, influencing ads, lack of accountability. And we could conclude that without values, this will lead to ethical debt. So not technical debt, but ethical debt. And sometimes it feels like, you know, I couldn't prove that back in the days when I did that presentation. But now it's interesting to see that this summer, Facebook is actually still being sued for that Cambridge Analytica thing back in 2012, right? So this ethical debt is slowly catching up to them. And yeah, I know there can also be business people say, yeah, it's nice to have, but values and mission and vision, that's the marketing department, and it's what's in it for my people. But also some old studies really show that, you know, companies that actually have proper values in their systems are like almost twice as more successful, and they have way more involvement, and that drops as soon as, you know, they're more like task-driven organizations where you just, for instance, need to pick up the trash or something. But still, even though if those companies have proper values in place, they are more successful. So how do we then operationalize this ethical AI part? And it's easy to engineer empathy, right? You know, you can make it look, make it smile, make it sound caring, and people will soon trust it. And I think it's even better to see that one of these early startups, Replica, has changed its entire, you know, business proposition into like, you know, being like the companion for people. I don't know if you ever tried this app. I tried it way back when it was just like ChatGPT version 1.2 or something, and it was crappy. And yeah, then after a few years it came back, and I really, if you look on Dutch television, look up this documentary AI Love, there are now people wanting to marry this AI because yeah, they feel like it's so human, you know, and just being faked. But it's interesting to see how easy that is to actually yeah, fool people, right? So I rather not fool people. I rather prefer that we craft a proper value system. And yeah, let's have a look at what we guys know, you know, when we do software. We need the top, we need a presentation layer, you know, an interface, something we can show that, of course, has some business logic. We just saw an interesting presentation before here about how you can optimize that with AI. A persistence layer, of course, and a database. And yeah, you could say that, you know, you have transparency, fairness, accountability on that layer below. You have some privacy and governance lower in, and of course your data integrity as the lowest thing, which should be a standard. If we now look at the top one, you would need like explainable content, right? So it would be fair to show, you know, this has been generated by AI and it has taken into account these sources, for instance. And of course, I think I've heard the word guardrails a lot today. So a lot of guardrails should be in place here as well to ensure that people also can't input the wrong data and that it can't give strange answers. And I guess it's also really good to ensure that you can actually input the user data, right? So it could, for instance, if it feels like it's not a good answer, we all know the thumbs up, thumbs down thing from ChatGPT. Yeah, that's actually quite valuable to actually flag bias or flag that there's something wrong. And if we go a layer deeper, this is where you need your prompt governance, right? So you have like some master prompts that needs to be included, which you probably need to change every now and a bit. Perhaps policy routing, perhaps change, you know, which model are we going to use? Need to log every decision there. And if we go even deeper, perhaps evaluate what vector data storage looks like, you know, the memory of the model, security and monitoring. And in the lowest layer, of course, we need to log everything. We need to look at the data origin and perhaps even need to look at the data lineage. So it's actually the history of how the data has been mutated over time. And this is quite easy now, right? Because now we can just say, oh, this feels like logical. We have these team members, and it doesn't matter if it's agile or extreme programming or whatever. We have the UX designer, we have the AI engineer and the developers, machine learning ops engineers, and a lead architect who's responsible for the data storage. And of course, I think there's a big role for product owners and QA to look over the entire spectrum, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be taken into account and be validated. And where this all fits in this process is like looking at, the values could be stored in your non-functional requirements. Your standards could be set in the definition of done. Your design requirements would logically have a place in your epics and your use stories. And eventually your governance could also not only be a thing on paper, but could also be something you do in actual sprint reviews with the client and show actually that you have some guardrails in place for bias and all the other stuff. Practical, so for instance, we have this epic AI assistant generates a customer response. In the non-functional requirements, it could say something like systems must disclose AI involvement and log all prompts. And we can have some stories and tasks like build why this recommendation UI part, add an audit log on the prompts to the database, and create, for instance, a fairness test. Well, I ran out of inspiration there, so didn't finish it. And also, in the definition of done, we could say, oh, we need to check that that the prompt version control is enabled, that all the bias tests have been passed, and that we verified that logging works, for instance. So that's kind of like how I believe we should put this stuff in there. What I would like to leave you guys with are these 4 things. First of all, understand that trust is earned, not engineered, right? So it's really good to start putting this on your backlog in some case and ensure that you feel that it's something that is earned, and that comes, of course, from values. And no values leave ethical debt. And also, I think it's good that you understand that every layer in this model that we build software with carries risks. And last, remember poor Boris. That's so, that's kind of it. I think one more thing, and I think the people who have seen Eric's talk this morning also already saw this. We had this idea, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's a shame that we only do this like in this group setting like once a year. So we would actually love to just build a community and perhaps have like meetups and everything. And yeah, we don't know where yet, but we now called it AI Cafe. So please, we didn't have anything ready yet, so we just created a quick form. Sign up, and we will inform you once we think we can do like a meetup. And it would be really cool to share ideas, demos, have a laugh, have a beer, and yeah, would be fun. Any questions?